Hey everybody, happy Friday. Welcome into To The Point. We are locked and loaded today with lots of things to dive into. It is a Friday, so we're going to be here with our best bets heading into the NFL and college football weekends, but we also have Major League Baseball kicking off the divisional round tomorrow afternoon. So looking forward to that. We had a restricted free agent signing in the National Hockey League. We have 2 days left of preseason games. We're going to get final cuts likely this weekend. So the season's right around the corner. Hope you've enjoyed the previews of every division. We still have the Pacific. We're going to get to it. I have all my notes. We're going to do it on Monday alongside what happens this weekend. So there'll be lots of content Monday. Tuesday on the show, we're going to look at the season. I'm going to announce the top 10 best players in the league heading into the season. I'll predict playoff teams. I'm sure some of them will be wrong. I will predict the ultimate Stanley Cup champion, which of course I'll be able to change my opinion after the trade deadline, so it really doesn't matter much right now. But you know what? We'll do it. I picked the Chiefs in the NFL last year. I got that right, so maybe I'll do it in hockey. Certainly didn't have Vegas, but again, maybe I'll strike gold and have another winner for all of you. But we have lots to dive into today, and we'll start with Thursday Night Football last night, where the Chicago Bears won a game. Chicago Bears trounced the Washington Commanders in Washington. Justin Fields had another really solid outing. He did not turn the ball over. The Bears' offensive line outplayed the Washington defensive line, one of the strengths of their team. And DJ Moore had a 200 burger, 230 yards receiving for the game, and 3 touchdowns, which vaulted him into second in the NFL receiving this season. The big thing, for most of the game, Justin Fields had a clean pocket. He showed the ability to throw the ball down the field. And for the first time up close and personal, we saw Justin Fields playing with a number one receiver. He had never done that in Chicago. He had never had one. Darnell Mooney was never that player. He's a deep threat. But we saw Justin Fields with time to throw, with a clean pocket, with a number one receiver, and the results were staggering. They put up 40 points last night, and the game was over at halftime. It was 27-3 at the half. I watched the third quarter and I went to bed because I said there's no reason to continue watching this. For the Washington Commanders and defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, who's also a defensive-minded coach, I don't know if this was the game plan going in. You can't make a change on the fly. Why keep playing man coverage? Why have one corner with DJ Moore, whether it was Benjamin St-Juste or whether it was Emmanuel Forbes after they gave up the first 2 touchdowns of the game? No safety help over the top, no linebacker dropping back into coverage. Just man the entire game. Dominating man coverage, throw after throw, yards after the catch, poor tackling from the Commanders. And it was just, I didn't understand it. They're dominating you and you don't make a change to the game. What are you, the Toronto Blue Jays? You got to stick to your plan the whole game. You don't make a change? Stupid. But the Commanders fall to 2-3. The Bears are now 1-4. And this is the thing. You watch one game and it's a Thursday night, and Thursday night games are weird. And you look at the result and go, well, the Bears didn't look all that bad in that game. Tevin Jenkins is back. Justin Fields had time to throw. Maybe this team can turn it around, and maybe they can. Maybe they can. But then again, you look ahead and go, the Bears have the Vikings in a divisional game. Could they win that game? Sure. Then they play the Raiders. That's a winnable game, certainly. Then they go to play the Chargers, a tougher game. The Bears aren't the worst team in the NFL. I do think the Bears are better than Arizona. I think the Bears are better than the Panthers. I said before the season that the Raiders were the worst team I'm thinking baseball. They're the worst team in the AFC West. I think even the Raiders are a worse team than the Broncos. I truly do. When it all comes together at the end of the year, I think the Broncos will finish ahead of the Raiders. So the Bears aren't the best team. They're not the worst team. The best thing about the Bears, and this is why if I'm Chicago, I'm not punting on the season. I'm not trading Justin Fields like Chris Canty said this morning on the mothership. I'm not full on tanking, sitting down players because it's only week 5. And sure, the Lions look great, but the NFC is not a loaded division, and you want to compete. You want to give fans a reason to go to Soldier Field. They've had enough disappointment. They've had enough bad football the last 40 years. It hasn't just started recently. And the reason you have the trump card and you don't tank like I normally tell teams to do is because you have the Panthers draft pick. The Bears have their own draft pick, and then the Carolina Panthers draft pick. The Carolina Panthers are 0-4, and as we're going to talk about the line, they're the biggest underdog, I believe, this week against the Detroit Lions. Them or the Giants against the Dolphins. The Panthers stink. Adam Thielen's their best receiver. They're apparently now in the market for a number 1 wide receiver. Well, you had one. You traded him for DJ Moore to get Bryce Young. So you're trying to get another receiver. You're trying to improve your team. Frank Reich, first-year head coach. Not a whole lot of talent. Not a great offensive line. And sure, you can look around and say Carolina plays in the NFC South, and that's not a good division, which it isn't. But you're still the worst team in your division. I think they're the worst team in football. So if you're the Bears, let's try to be competitive. We might try to be competitive and still suck and end up with a top 5 draft pick. So you might get the first pick from Carolina, and then you get the 5th pick. You could trade that pick into something else. You could flip it around. Or you could still be in the position while trying to be competitive to end up with Caleb Williams on your team next season if he declares for the NFL draft. It's the best of both worlds. You don't crap on your team, and I think as a fan base, you can appreciate it because guess what? Okay, our team's trying to win. We're trying to be competitive. We're not trying to be incompetent. And yet we still might end up with the top pick in the draft because we made a good trade last year with Carolina. Arizona did the same thing with the Texans. Texans have been a surprisingly really good team through 4 weeks. CJ Stroud has not had a turnover as a rookie quarterback. Second most yards, I think he's thrown 1,200 so far this year. Second most yards in NFL history to start a career without throwing an interception. He looks really good, and DeMeco Ryans has that team playing competitive football in a division that's completely wide open. So Arizona owns Houston's 2024 first-round pick. I'm sure they looked at it and said, this is going to be top 5. They're not going to be a good team. Hey, Houston might compete for the division at the end of the year. Who the hell knows? Stranger things have happened. So if the Bears can get solid offensive line play, they have DJ Moore playing the way he is, Cole Kmet, a tight end that's finally was used correctly last night, and the kid's a stud. A running game that needs to improve, but you have the capable pieces, then maybe you have something. And maybe you don't, and you sell pieces in late October, and if a team wants Justin Fields, then you could consider trading him. But the Bears, who are never in a good spot as a franchise, because they're never competitive and they never make smart decisions, and it's constant incompetence. They are in a good spot because of Carolina and because of themselves. Do they win their next 4 games? I just laid out a couple of them, but do they win these games? They're tough. Who the hell knows? But they're 1-4. You have hope. You have optimism. That's something. For a bad team, that sometimes all you have is optimism. Like, we hope we can do this. So next 4 for the Bears. Vikings, winnable game. Raiders, winnable game. Chargers, probably a loss. The week after that, you play the Saints. Those 3 of the next 4, the Bears, I think, could go 3-1. Could they go 0-4 because they're the Bears? Absolutely. Not easy to win in New Orleans, but it can be done. Tampa did it pretty easily last week with Baker Mayfield slinging the pill. But can they turn this around? Can they be a competitive team this year? Yes. Will they? I still don't know. Because it's the Bears. But they weren't an 0-4 team. They should have beat the Broncos. They should be 2-3 currently. They shouldn't beat the Chiefs. You lost a couple games, but they should have beat the Broncos. You should have beat the Commies. 2-3 after week 5 looks hell of a lot better than 1-4. But you are what your record says you are. So you get a win, and one of the biggest stories with the Bears was Chase Claypool, Canadian wide receiver, formerly a Notre Dame product. He was a healthy scratch the last 2 games, complained about the way the team was using him. Formerly the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has been nothing short of a disappointment in the NFL. And the Bears traded him this morning. They dealt Chase Claypool to the Miami Dolphins per league sources. It'll be a 2025 6th and a 2025 7th returning from the Dolphins for Chase Claypool. This is the Dolphins taking a chance, getting some more depth at wide receiver. They still have Tyreek Hill, obviously. They have Jalen Waddle. Braxton Berrios a little banged up. So could Chase Claypool come in, give you a spark? Yes, but you give up really nothing that you're concerned about. So the Dolphins take a chance on Chase Claypool, playing under Mike McDaniel and one of the best offenses in the NFL right now. It's another chance for Chase. Like I said, has been such a disappointment in the league, but had a lot of hype coming out of Notre Dame and has not lived up to it. But the Bears ship him off. It's good for the Bears. They needed to get rid of him. He gets a fresh start. See if he has any maturity in him. So we'll see what happens with Chase Claypool and the Chicago Bears. But interesting things for sure on the horizon. What other games do we have this weekend in the NFL? Well, we got a full slate. Sunday morning, we have another London game. Jacksonville spending 2 weeks in London. The Bills head over to play them. That's a 10:30 kickoff Sunday morning. The Bills get some good news. Von Miller has been practicing all week. It looks like he's going to return for this game, coming off the physically unable to perform list. So a defense that's already looked great through 4 weeks gets Von Miller back to add to the pass rush. Bills are a 5.5-point favorite. Since the debacle in the Meadowlands in week 1 against the Jets, Josh Allen has been the best quarterback in football. Confident, Ken Dorsey running great plays, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen on the same page, James White running the football more effectively. Jacksonville squeaked out a win against Atlanta. That doesn't impress me. Atlanta has one of the worst quarterbacks in football in Desmond Ridder. Talent all around him, but he can't do anything with it. Jags look dysfunctional. They look a little disoriented. Trevor Lawrence has not played good football. Their defense leaves something to be desired. I've been betting against the Bills all season. I'm done with it. It's the way to lose money. Bills might have traveled this week. Jags might have been there for 1 week, and that does give them an advantage. Absolutely. 2 division winners from last year. Jags winning the AFC South, Bills winning the AFC East. The Bills' defense is better. The Bills' skill position players have been balling out all year long. That offensive line that's still banged up. Cam Robinson will not be back for Jacksonville this week, their left tackle. I think it's going to be a long day for Trevor Lawrence. And I think the Bills go in there, make another statement, improve to 4-1. The play is to take the Bills minus 5.5. They win outright. The Baltimore Ravens visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 teams that are incredibly banged up. Kenny Pickett has a fracture in his knee. Could look worse. Look at the time he might have torn his ACL or something more significant, but he's scheduled to play this week, full practices all week. He said he's going to be out there heading into a bye week for the Steelers. They're also without Deontay Johnson, without Cam Hayward, without Connor Hayward. They're hurting. Baltimore has 13 people on their injury report. Does look like Rashawn Bateman's going to return. Odell Beckham Jr. has a chance of returning this week. That's great, but Lamar Jackson's healthy. Mark Andrews is healthy. Their offensive line is solid. And Baltimore's 3-1, and it's a quiet 3-1. They're a team that's just flying under the radar. Lamar Jackson's playing good football. He's not getting injured. He's not running too much because we'd hear that because anytime he does it, somebody has to point it out and look at him and say about his weaknesses, not talk about his strengths. Lamar's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He has been for a long time, and it's clear. Kenny Pickett is not, and I'd love the Steelers to be better, but they're not because I thought they'd be better. Their offense is putrid. They put up 6 points against the Houston Texans last week. Pickett's hurt. Their team's hurt. They need a bye week. I hate an early bye week, but they need one desperately. Baltimore's already won a road game in Cincinnati. They win their second divisional road game this year. Baltimore is a 4-point road favorite. is an easy game for the Eagles by any means. Eagles aren't as good in the secondary as they were last year. They've had some injuries. They missed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's now with the Lions, certainly. But I look at the pass rush for the Eagles, and I challenge them to have a game. Because the Rams, their biggest flaw for their team is their offensive line. And it's clear, and everybody knows it. So go take advantage of it. Go attack Jalen Carter, who's looked really good as a rookie. Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, the guys that you have up there need to have an impact on this game. We need to win the game, really. I think Jalen Hurts will be fine. So I think the Rams are a better team than I expected them to be. I think this is going to be a tough game, not an easy win for the Eagles. A.J. Brown had his best game of the season last week. I'm sure they'll be focused on him, but it's not like Jalen Ramsey is a member of the Rams anymore, so you don't have that much depth at the position. I think this game comes down to the wire. And 4.5 is an interesting number. I'm kind of thinking somehow Eagles are up by 7. Rams are in a position to kick a field goal, which they do, which cuts the number to 4, which covers the number. I think the Rams are going to be able to score some points. They weren't able to do it in the second half against the Colts, which concerns me a little bit. But you still go on to win the game because Stafford is good in clutch moments. Give me the Rams plus 4.5. Eagles win the game, Rams cover. And it'll be, I think it's one of the best games of the weekend. Kansas City heading to Minnesota. Kansas City is 3-1, but they have not been impressive so far this year. The only thing that people care about with Kansas City is not how Mahomes is playing, even though he's played pretty poorly so far this year, or the fact that Travis Kelce's now 34, and he does look a little bit slower. And that you don't have McCole Hardman, and MVS might be your best receiver, and what the hell is Kadarius Toney doing? None of that's important. It's that is Taylor Swift going to be at the games? I think there's a 0% chance she's going to be at a game in Minnesota. And there's been no reporting on it this week. But we'll see. Kansas City has not impressed me. They dominated the Bears, but that was a weird game. Patrick Mahomes, I think he knew he played bad on Sunday Night Football against the Jets. He knew that Zach Wilson played better than him, and that is embarrassing in its own way because Zach Wilson is not a great quarterback. So you have your whole week just to sit on it, just to think about what went down. And I think the Chiefs are going to be ready to play in Minnesota. This is a really important game for Minnesota because you're 1-3. And you're a playoff team last year, and you can't afford to lose too many games. But you're going to lose this one. You're going to drop to 1-4, and there will be questions around what you do with Kirk Cousins moving forward. Just look at their season so far. Kirk Cousins has thrown 2 interceptions basically in the end zone. One that sealed the loss against the Chargers, and then in the first drive against the Carolina Panthers. So Minnesota does have Justin Jefferson, and he's fantastic, and he'll have his yards, and TJ Hawkinson, and their offense is very compact. But it won't be enough. I think Kansas City has a game that everybody's impressed by. They win the game by at least a touchdown. Kansas City -4 on the road in Minnesota. New York Jets at Denver Broncos. We all thought before the year this game would be interesting for multiple reasons. It still is, but for different reasons. It's now the Nathaniel Hackett versus Sean Payton game. Nathaniel Hackett, the former head coach of the Denver Broncos, returning to Denver as the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, way back when, told Sean Payton to keep his coach's name out of his mouth, just scaring everybody with his tone. But now Aaron Rodgers is obviously not playing, and it's Zach Wilson against Russell Wilson. Quietly, Russell Wilson's put together a pretty solid season so far. He's third overall in net quarterback rating. But they're 1-3, and they likely should be 0-4. And what's also funny is Zach Wilson had the best game of his NFL career Sunday night, and the Jets head into this game as an underdog. So how good really was it? Breece Hall is no longer on a snap count or a pitch count, if you will. He'll be a full go in this game. He can have the ball as many times as he wants. Denver cannot stop the run. We've been over this. Did you watch that game against the Miami Dolphins? It was a complete disaster. Zach Wilson needs to have design runs in this game or have run-pass options. That's going to be key for the Jets. As I stated, I think the Denver offense has been really good. The Jets defense is solid as well. Jets defense is the strength of their team, the interior of the defensive line, and then Sauce Gardner. I imagine he goes one-on-one with Courtland Sutton, which will be fun to watch all day long. To think you're going to bet on Zach Wilson is scary because I'm not bought in yet. He had one good game, and you look at it and go, okay, he was pretty solid in this game. And he does look happier this week in his interviews, and he seems more confident. And you look at him and go, that looks like a different guy, a different Zach, if you will. Even though I think that's saying stupid, because do we really evolve as human beings? We say we do, but do we really? Optimistic people probably think we do. As a pessimist, I think no. But Denver's at home. 0-2 at home so far this year for the Denver Broncos. Losing to the Commanders and to the Raiders. Woof. Where do you go with this game? And I like this game. I think it's interesting. I think the 5 o'clock games are good this week. Cincy, Arizona, it's interesting. Philly, Los Angeles Rams, I think this game's going to be really good. Kansas City, and then you get the Jets at the Broncos just to spice it up a little bit more. Sometimes you have to live dangerously, as Dr. Evil once said. The Jets can come up with a defensive stop, can come up with a turnover in this game. Sean Payton does something stupid. He freaks out. Zach Wilson, like I said, have some design runs for him. Use his athletic ability. Allow him to be creative in the pocket. Find receivers down the field and run Breece Hall a ton because they can't stop the run in Denver. Give me the Jets plus 1.5 on the road in Mile High to pull off the upset. And then we get to the nightcap, the game of the week, and finally a good primetime game because there's been some shit so far this year. The Dallas Cowboys head to the Bay Area to play the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco has eliminated Dallas from the past 2 postseasons. San Francisco has been dominating the league so far. Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, should be the leading frontrunner for the MVP. He leads the league in all-purpose yards, has over 450 yards rushing, over 150 yards receiving. Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy completed 95.6% of his passes last week. San Francisco looks great. Their defense is solid. Everything's going well. Dallas had their speed bump against Arizona. They dominated the Patriots, only giving up 3 points. And I think you throw the Eagles in there, but I think most people look and say Dallas, San Francisco, the two best teams in the NFC. San Francisco's at home. They're a 3.5-point home favorite. If this was a playoff game, I'd be taking San Francisco minus 3.5 every day of the week because I don't trust the Cowboys to win in the postseason. It's like betting on the Maple Leafs. It's a loser's bet. It's a sucker's bet. You'll be broke come Monday. Regular season, Dallas struggling against San Francisco. Their offensive line is back. Kyron Smith, Zach Martin are both going to be playing in this game, full participants at practice. CeeDee Lamb is available, is going to be playing for the Cowboys after missing a few practices this week. He is playing this week. Now, for Dallas, this is a game where you look at no Trayvon Diggs. It hurts them because you have Ayuk, you have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle is an X factor. Dallas in the red zone has been atrocious. I've pointed that out for multiple weeks now. They can't finish drives. They haven't been able to. This is the one case where they miss Ezekiel Elliott because he's just an easy hand the ball off to him and he'll get you 3-4 yards and plow his way into the end zone. Well, San Francisco has a much leaner back. They do that with Christian McCaffrey, who had 4 touchdowns last week against the Cardinals. Dan Quinn against Kyle Shanahan. They worked together in Atlanta. They should have won a Super Bowl together. So they have lots of history. Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. Brock Purdy has never lost a regular season game in his NFL career, which is quite staggering. Dallas will compete in this game because these are, I think, right there, two best teams in the NFC alongside the Eagles. It's a heavyweight tilt for sure. It's going to be a back and forth affair. Micah Parsons, big X factor. What can he do? Pass rush for the Cowboys. Tough one to predict. But you think, how long is the streak going to go for Brock Purdy before he loses a game? How long can this keep going? Week 6, the 49ers go to Cleveland. Tough game. Then they go to Minnesota on a Monday night. Then they play Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not the same Cincinnati that we once knew. Then they play the Bills on a Sunday night. So they have some tough games in their schedule. San Francisco coming up. I do think they win the game, and I do think they cover the number. If Dallas was playing better football in the red zone, being more consistent, having a plan and generating it coming in, I would take Dallas because they normally win this game. They're like the Bills the past couple years. The Bills win the regular season game against the Chiefs or against the Cincinnati Bengals that they then lose in the postseason. I just haven't seen it from Dallas, and to think you're going to figure out the formula, to figure out the answers to the test against the best team, I just can't see that happening. San Francisco will win. They will cover the number at home. It will be close, however. Dallas will play well, but San Francisco will improve to 5-0 and tell everybody why they're the best team in the NFL. Those are the games this weekend. Pretty solid slate. I think it's a better slate than it was last weekend. You have a London game, some divisional games, some big spreads. You have some opportunities to bet and make some money this weekend. College football, some interesting matchups. In the afternoon, LSU visiting Missouri. LSU coming off their loss to Ole Miss, where they gave up over 800 yards on defense. Missouri's undefeated. They're 5-0, LSU 3-2. Missouri at home beating Kansas State on a 61-yard walk-off field goal. Jaden Daniels has looked great for LSU. LSU can score. That's not their problem, but Cook for Mizzou has been very good as well. An important game, two ranked schools in the SEC, two teams that can put up points. A fun game. Give me Mizzou plus 5.5. Yes, they're a home underdog. I'm not sure they win, but they keep it close because they can score points. Maryland, undefeated Maryland at undefeated Ohio State. For the past 5 years, Maryland has gone undefeated in September. Well, we're now in October, and Maryland is a good team. They have one of the most underreported, under-talked about quarterbacks in the country in Talia Tagovailoa, Tua's brother, senior quarterback who will be in the NFL next year. Ohio State's coming off their emotional win over Notre Dame. They did have a bye week mixed in there. And Ohio State's a 19.5 point home favorite. Maryland's not a great school. They start games slow. 19.5 is a big number. Ohio State normally blows these teams out. I was impressed by their game against Notre Dame because it was not easy at all. They had to fight and claw for this opportunity. And yes, there's been some good things from Ohio State and Kyle McCord early in the season, but we've seen some injuries with Marvin Harrison Jr., and he will play. Ohio State is 100% winning the game. To me, it's just a debate of, can Maryland keep it close? Can they keep it within 3 touchdowns? I think they were a better team than they were in past years. I like Maryland plus 19.5. They keep it within 3 touchdowns. Oklahoma at Texas. Red River Showdown. Both teams undefeated. 2 teams with quarterbacks that have been playing extremely well. To me, Georgia's the number 1 ranked team, but it would be hard to argue that Texas has not been the best team in college football this year. They have the best win on the schedule against Alabama, regardless of how Alabama looks. Just beating Alabama is impressive. They got by Wyoming in that scare of a game, which is Wyoming's a tough team. They're playing Fresno this week. That's a good game in and of itself. Oklahoma, they've turned it around. They've had some tough moments. They had a tough go against Cincinnati. Texas is a 6.5 point home favorite. I like Texas big. It's Red River. There's a rivalry there. These 2 schools do not like one another. Texas is a team that should be in the playoff this year. They should be competing for the national title. I don't view Cincinnati the same way. I don't view Oklahoma the same way. Oklahoma's good. They're not great. I don't think can keep score with them. I think Texas is a better defense. Texas wins by at least a touchdown. They'll win by more. Washington State at UCLA. Love this game. 2 teams coming off different results. Washington State gets a huge win against Oregon State, then has a bye. UCLA comes off a disappointing loss in a battle with Utah, then they go on a bye. They lost by 7 points. So now they're both off a bye week. They're both healthier, and they meet again. UCLA with 1 loss. Washington State undefeated. 2 great Pac-12 teams. Charlie Ward has been fantastic for Washington State. Dante Moore, the true freshman, has been dynamic for UCLA. It's a good game. UCLA is a 3.5-point home favorite, but they don't get much of a home crowd. I thought Washington State would be a favorite. When I saw the line, I was surprised. I like Washington. I like their team. They can put up points with anybody. I think Washington State will go in to the Rose Bowl and beat them. Washington State plus 3.5. Alabama at Texas A&M. This is how you know that the books don't think Alabama's very good. They're only a 1.5-point favorite against Texas A&M. Texas A&M was out Connor Wiegand, their starting quarterback. Max Johnson, son of former Super Bowl champion Brad Johnson, will be starting. He's looked really good in the game and a half that he's played. He started his career at LSU, then has transferred over to A&M. So Texas A&M can score. Their defense is pretty damn good. And Alabama has to go play them on the road. They've had a couple wins with Jalen Milroe. Again, none of these wins all that impressive. SEC matchup, A&M has gotten some impressive wins. They did lose to Miami, but again, Miami is a tough school. This is a back and forth game for me. I've been betting a lot of dogs so far. And it just feels like an underdog weekend in college football to make some money. And there's this weekend, you look at the schedule and go, that's it for me. I didn't bet on Ole Miss in the Alabama game because I didn't trust Ole Miss. But Ole Miss is a decent team. Don't play a lick of defense, but they can score. A&M has had Alabama's number in the past. They beat them a few years ago when A&M was not a good team. They nearly beat them last year, losing by a field goal in a game they should have won. It's at Texas Station, big crowd. It'll be loud. Alabama to have 2 wins, so we'd have 2 losses by early October. Sounds crazy, but they're gonna. A&M plus 1.5, and they win the game outright. Syracuse at North Carolina. North Carolina's coming off a bye. They get a wide receiver who transferred, who wasn't allowed to play for some reason. Oh, well, the only reason was because the NCAA is the most corrupt organization ever created. They get him back. Drake May. Syracuse can't score points. They're a good school. They play good defense, but they can't score points. Their quarterback can't really throw the ball down the field. North Carolina doesn't play a lick of defense either, but it'll be good enough. North Carolina's an 8.5-point home favorite. They win by 2 touchdowns. Wake Forest at Clemson. Wake, no Sam Hartman, but they've been decent in their first season without Sam Hartman. You think, okay, you lose a quarterback of that stature, you won't be able to compete with the best teams in college football. But they've been okay. They've been in the games. They battle hard, for sure. Clemson's a 20.5-point home favorite, which is a big number for a school that's only 3-2 and for a program that isn't that great, if we're going to be honest here. If we're going to shoot it straight between us girls. It's a big number. I didn't know where to go. I don't bet on this game because I'd love to bet on Wake, but Clemson, they did look good last week. Steer clear. Colorado at Arizona State. Colorado coming off back-to-back losses, put up a hell of a fight in their comeback that fell short against USC. Still no Travis Hunter, but Shedeur Sanders is a stud. They can put up points with Weaver and with Harrison at tight end and Horn. Arizona State's battled hard so far this year in first year under head coach Kenny Dillingham. But Colorado on the road minus 4.5. I think they win the game by a touchdown. Colorado improves to 4-2 at Arizona State. Kentucky at Georgia. Georgia stumbled the last 2 weeks. They had a tight game against Auburn last weekend where it looked like it could have went either way. It looked like Auburn could have won that game. And they also had a tough game where they were losing 14-3 at halftime to South Carolina. Kentucky, on the other hand, is 5-0. They're undefeated. They're a ranked team. Their new quarterback, Devin Leary's, looked really good in Mark Stoops' offense. And this season in an SEC that seems wide open, Kentucky's playing good football. They can run the ball. They have a solid offensive line. They have a lot of good things going for them. Georgia still remains a 14.5-point home favorite. Big number. Big number for Georgia, but they get the respect. Playing in Athens is not easy. We've seen Kentucky really drop the ball in some of these big games. But they're 5-0. They look good. I expect Georgia to win this game because I think they need to make a statement. But I think Kentucky can cover. Primetime Saturday night. We're getting a lot of covers this week. Kentucky, plus 14.5. Michigan at Minnesota. Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten. Michigan is starting to look better and better week after week. I think Texas and Michigan have looked better this season than Georgia, quite frankly. They should be the top 2 ranked teams in the country. Minnesota can't score points. Michigan's defense is getting better and better. They're a 19.5-point home underdog. I don't care. Minnesota will not cover that number. Michigan wins. Notre Dame on the road at Louisville. Notre Dame has had a hell of a stretch here. Have to play Ohio State, you lose, a heartbreaker. Then the next weekend you have to go to Durham to play Duke, and you only win the game by 7 points, but it's a nail biter and quite a game. Now you get Louisville, who's undefeated, but they win in strange ways. They don't have a great offense. First-year head coach Jeff Brom's doing the program well. But Notre Dame's a tough school. They can run the football. It's only 6.5 points. I think Notre Dame's a better team than that. Louisville will not be able to keep up with them. Sam Hartman's played Louisville a ton, being in the ACC for a long time. Notre Dame minus 6.5. And finally, you get Arizona visiting USC to finish the day. USC can score with anybody. Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the country. Zachariah Branch might be the most talented true freshman wide receiver we've seen in a very long time. But Arizona, their quarterback is talented also. They can put up points. Arizona's they're not loaded with talent. They're not going to be in a playoff team. They'll finish in the bottom of the Pac-12 because it's the toughest conference in college football. But they beat Stanford. They lost by 7 points to Washington in a big cover last week. They crushed UTEP. They did lose to Mississippi State, but they kept that game close. Beat Arizona State, lost to Washington State by 11. They're in these games. To keep Washington to 31 points is impressive in and of itself. So I think USC is going to score a ton of points, as they do every week. I think Arizona is going to score some points too, because USC's defense is the worst maybe in the conference. The way that Colorado played down the stretch to push that game to 7 points to cover the spread late, I think Arizona will do the same thing. So you can get USC, they're at 21.5. 3 touchdowns? Can Arizona cover 3 touchdowns? Absolutely they can. Arizona plus 21.5, little 11:30 p.m. kickoff. Gotta love it. That's the college football slate for the weekend. Major League Baseball. Our divisional series start tomorrow. Let's begin in the National League. The best series of the four, in my mind, Phillies at the Braves. They met last year in the divisional series, and the Phillies upset the Braves in 4 games. And the Phillies can do it again. You look at their rotation, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, did they look good or what in the wild card games? They have experience pitching in the postseason. They know what they're doing. Now the Braves have Max Fried, Spencer Strider, who's not bad in his own right. But you look at the Phillies, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Rojas, Schwarber, a bullpen with Hoffman and Jose Alvarado who can throw 98-mile-an-hour sinkers that looks just impossible to hit. The Phillies are dangerous. Then again, you see the Braves, who Acuna's the MVP and Matt Olson's going to be the runner-up, and they had 5 players on their team hit at least 35 home runs this season, which is completely absurd. The most wins in baseball. A bullpen that they did improve when they had the opportunity. They added Brad Hand and Iglesias, formerly of the Los Angeles Angels, and Joe Jimenez from the Detroit Tigers. So it's an interesting series. A lot of clutch hitting. And ultimately, I trust the Phillies starting pitchers more than I trust Atlanta. Fried's great. Strider can have his problems, but Fried's been injured this season. How's he going to look? I just saw the Phillies, and I think playing the wild card round is an advantage in a certain way because you got a couple games under your belt. The Braves just sat there for a week and had to wait. Phillies went into the line of fire, crushed the Marlins, and sent a message to the rest of Major League Baseball that we're coming and we want the World Series that we did not get last year. So while the Braves are chasing a dynastic season, chasing accolades, and I love the Braves with Alex Anthopoulos, who I think is one of the smartest baseball minds and the best interview, and one of the best interviews in all of pro sports. Open, honest, just an awesome dude. And while Acuna, I love Acuna and Olsen and all the players that the Braves have, the Phillies won last year. The Braves will want redemption. You'll feel it. I think the Phillies win again. Phillies in 5 games. They find a way to win this series again. They have a fun lineup. They got a veteran team. They're experienced. They went through it last year. They know what it's like to start a series on the road. They'll come out on top. Phillies in 5 with the upset. National League, Arizona and the Dodgers. Another divisional matchup. Now, the Dodgers are wounded. No Walker Buehler. No Urias. No, I was going to say Drake May. It's not his. That's a quarterback from North Carolina. Mr. Redheaded pitcher, I'm forgetting his name right now. It's not coming to the top of mind. No Tony Gonsolin, who had Tommy John surgery. They're without about 4 of their 5 starting pitchers. You still have Clayton Kershaw. He's still around. Might be his last year. Brody Miller is available. But it's not the same Dodgers staff that we've seen in past years. It's not a threatening pitching staff, but then you look around and go, well, the Dodgers are still a good team. Hell yeah. Bobby Miller, Joe Kelly in the bullpen. They added Ryan Yarbrough. You add Colton Wong. They always just add pieces whenever they can. That's one of the best things they do as an organization. They're not afraid to take a chance. We might see Emmett Sheehan in this series, who's a young pitcher they brought up late in the year to help. So while they might not have familiar names, they might not have the names that you expect, they're still a great team. Mookie Betts will be in MVP running. Freddie Freeman had another fantastic season. JD Martinez was a great pickup from the Boston Red Sox. He still had game. For Arizona, we just saw them play. Corbin Carroll, their leadoff hitter, is their best player. Ketel Marte, Christian Walker, Yuri Gurriel Jr. Then you look. I talked about their pitching staff. They're going to get Merrill Kelly to pitch in Game 1. They're going to get Zach Gallen to pitch in Game 2. And they'll have to figure it out after that. But Ginkel, Sewald, Thompson, their bullpen look damn solid. So Arizona, you have to go to Milwaukee. You find a way to win that series. Now you go play the Dodgers, a team that you've had no success against for a very long period of time. The Dodgers have owned the National League West for seemingly a decade. And while I did not pick the Arizona Diamondbacks to beat the Milwaukee Brewers, even though I should have, I'm going to pick them to beat the Los Angeles Dodgers at Chavez Ravine in this series. Arizona in 4 games. They're young, but they're just good enough to get by. The Dodgers are a wounded club. They'll be better next year. Walker Buehler will return. Shohei Ohtani will be on their roster. There's an early prediction for you. They'll win the NL West again next year. They'll beat the Diamondbacks for the division, but the Diamondbacks are in the right place at the right time with the right matchup. Both road teams win in the National League. Pardon me. To the American League. Texas at Baltimore. Baltimore, 100-win team, over a 20-win difference year to year. Seemingly everything they did went well. Call up Adley Rutschman last year, perfect. Call up Gunnar Henderson late in the year, proves hits over 25 home runs this year. Keep veterans like Santander, Ryan Mountcastle, Kyle Bradish, Dean Kramer, Rodriguez. They don't have great ERAs. Some other guys don't have great batting averages, but they put it all together and it creates a great team. You lose your all-star closer in Felix Bautista, but you have Yair Cano, you have Dean Colon Perez, and you figure it out. Baltimore gets home playoff games. They win the division title for only the second time since 2014. But here comes Texas. Texas should have won the American League West, but they screwed the pooch. They flopped it down the stretch, and they gave it to Houston. So you look around and go, well, we don't have Jacob deGrom, but you kind of figure you were not going to have Jacob deGrom because the guy has Tommy John every other day. We have Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Jung, Ethan Carter, my guy. We can hit all over the lineup. We still have Nathan Eovaldi. His arm's still put together. We acquired Jordan Montgomery. And Dane Dunning's not a bad starting pitcher when he wants to focus in. So we got a pretty good team. Now looking ahead to starting pitching matchups, I can't even do that for you guys because they play tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock and we don't know the starting pitchers yet. And I can tell you the starting pitchers in every other goddamn series. As you can tell, it's a little bit frustrating for me. But it doesn't matter. The Orioles were a great story. They're a great team. They're going to be competitive for a long time. They will be a pain to deal with for the Blue Jays, for the Rays, for the Red Sox, for the Yankees, for years to come until they have to pay them. Then they'll be in tough. And while I think they'll battle, I think this series is interesting. I think the Texas Rangers have better pitching. I believe the Texas Rangers have more clutch bats. They have a little bit more experience. Corey Seager is the best player in this series. And Texas spent the money to be a great team. They get to the postseason, and I believe Texas will get to the championship series. I have 3 road teams winning so far. I have Texas in 4 games. And that leaves us with the Twins and the Astros. Twins upsetting the Blue Jays even though they're at home. Don't let anybody tell you that wasn't an upset. Incredible series from Carlos Correa, Royce Lewis, Polanco. Minnesota has a great rotation. Studs like Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray. Thielbar, Duran, Griffin Jacks. Minnesota is dangerous when you give them the lead because they can absolutely keep it for a long period of time with excellent defense and solid pitching. Houston, a team that let players walk in the offseason after winning a World Series and letting Justin Verlander go, but now he's back on your team because the Mets were a complete disaster. The Astros, Justin Verlander, will be pitching in Game 1 against Joe Ryan. Framber Valdez in Game 2. They have some good pitchers on this team. Not to mention Jose Altuve down the stretch was one of the most dangerous players in September. Yordan Alvarez is healthy. Kyle Tucker, Jose Abreu, experienced. Alex Bregman. Jeremy Pena, who was the Championship Series and the World Series MVP just last year. And Houston playing at home is as tough as it gets. You get Verlander, you get Valdez, you have Presley still back there in that bullpen. Houston's not as good a team as they were in past years because they don't have the depth that they once had. But to me, it does not matter. The Twins are a good team. The Astros are a little bit better. We will be set up for a Texas-Houston all-AL West showdown in the championship series to settle it once and for all. I have Houston beating Minnesota in 4 games. So to repeat, I have the Phillies, the Diamondbacks, the Texas Rangers, and the Houston Astros all advancing in the postseason. The wild card was fun. I think this round's going to be a fun version of the postseason. I think we're set up really well here for some entertaining baseball in the month of October. And it all kicks off tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock between the Rangers and the Orioles, 2 pitchers who we don't know who will be pitching yet. Can't wait. Haha. Now, before we wrap today, so that was a lot of stuff. There's also a UFC event this weekend. UFC Vegas 80. Grant Dawson, Bobby Green. Lightweight showdown at 155 pounds. It's at the Apex, but I still think this is a very good card. Main card is spectacular, in my opinion. Grant Dawson, surging contender at 155 pounds. A huge guy, great on the ground. So is Bobby Green when he wants to. He just submitted Tony Ferguson in July with a rear naked choke. So both guys coming off wins. Dawson beating Damir Ismagulov, who was undefeated in UFC. Bobby Green beating the veteran legend Tony Ferguson. Bobby Green's a plus 310 underdog. I think Grant Dawson's just so big. He's so crafty. He can get you to the ground. I think he gets the win in this fight. He couldn't submit Ismagulov. Bobby Green is a guy that's not going to want to be in that position. I think he'll try to fight out of it, put himself in maybe a position to get in trouble. I think Grant Dawson wins this, and I'd like to even to take him by submission. Joe Pyfer against Abdul Alhassan. Joe Pyfer, one of the great stories in UFC. I talked about before His father, horrible father, used to beat him, treat him like crap, and he broke through it, and now he's a UFC fighter. Surging guy at 185 pounds. One of the best strikers in the division. His last fight was against Gerald Meerschaert in April. He knocked him out in the first round. This is a tougher fight, a tougher style matchup because both these guys like to stand on the feet and throw. But Joe Pyfer, I think, will continue his winning ways since the Contender Series days. Alhassan's plus 340, a big underdog. I think Joe Pyfer wins, and I think he'll win again via a TKO or a KO. Two veterans, Alex Morono, Joaquin Buckley. Joaquin Buckley, one of the most colorful characters in the sport. One of the best knockouts with a wheel kick in UFC history. Tough matchup for both guys. Buckley's a slight favorite in this fight, and I do think he'll win in an interesting bout. Drew Dober, coming off a loss to Matt Frevola back in New Jersey in May at UFC 289, or 288, pardon me. He'll fight Ricky Glenn. Drew Dober gets back in the win column, finishes him with the right hand, and gets back into the lightweight rankings, back in the conversation. Austin Lynn's Ion Cutelaba. Cutelaba was on a losing streak, got a big knockout in his last fight at light heavyweight. Another colorful character, another guy who isn't afraid to show some emotion, show some personality. He's a slight favorite. He gets another win, Cutelaba. And Bill Algeo, Alex Hernandez. Bill Algeo won in Nashville. He gets another win this weekend. But it's a good UFC event at the Apex, couple Apex events next couple weekends, and then we get UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi the third weekend in October. Other news in the NHL, Anaheim signed Jamie Drysdale, their other restricted free agent, to a 3-year, $6.9 million contract. So that's $2.3 million per season. So Trevor Zegras and Drysdale both locked up to 3-year deals. And obviously, Zegras gets a lot more money. Drysdale missed almost all of last season with a pretty serious shoulder injury. So he's looking to come back, get into training camp, and play before to start the season. So some good news for Anaheim. The only remaining restricted free agent is the Ottawa Senators forward Shane Pinto. They only have about $1 million in cap space. Josh Norris is looking like he's going to miss the start of the season with a shoulder injury. He might start on the injured reserve. So Shane Pinto, nothing seems imminent. They say they're close, but that's always the truth until it's not. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward in the Ottawa Senators, but Jamie Drysdale locked up. We talked about this all week, the TSN top 10 players. They just released it. I think they're doing a show tonight to talk about it, potentially. Number 1 is McDavid. No surprise. Number 2, Drysdale, which I agree. I agree with the top 2 so far. Normally I hate this list. Number 3, Nathan McKinnon. Also agree. Wow, this is a great list so far. Number 4, Cale Makar. I'm cool with that. I would have also have Cale Makar. The top 4, they're finally listening to me. These TSN guys getting some perspective. Number 5, Austin Matthews. That's fair. He's great. He's a very good player. He's right there. Vasilevsky or Matthews for me. Matthews at 5. I'm not going to quibble with that. Number 6, Matthew Tkachuk, my guy. Number 7, David Pastrnak, also my guy. Good to see these guys be in the top 10. Nikita Kucherov, interesting. Number 9, Jack Hughes. Wow. And number 10, Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen is great. He's a horse. He can do everything. Over 100 points last year, 55 goals. If you're going to have Mitch Marner high, you got to have Rantanen high. Because Rantanen's been better throughout the course of his career, and you won't hear that many places, but he has been. And Mitch Marner is a great player. Mikko Rantanen is bigger. He's stronger. I wonder if they changed the goal song for the Leafs. I read that on Twitter. I'd love them to because the song sucks. Doesn't really bother me though because I listen to most games on mute. But would I change it? Yeah, because it's a lame song. Pick something a little more, cool, just interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not though. But we'll see. But that's going to be it for today's program. Hope you all have a great weekend. We'll be doing the Pacific Division preview on Monday. We'll react to all the NFL news from the weekend, all the games. So enjoy it, and we'll talk soon. Just to the point.